Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? So let's go ahead and get right to this. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So again, Shawn Doyle, and I've been working with GAF for about almost 11 years now. I do the negotiation training. I do a lot of other questions training, presentation training, developing messages, a lot of those kinds of components, which is really about delivering value to our customers. I have with me, as Janice had said, I have Steve with me. So Steve may be jumping in every now and then. He's kind of managing the questions for me and Steve. So as questions come up or anything you see good out there, just let me know and we'll go from there. Good?
You got it.
Okay. So the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to go ahead and ask you guys in the chat to write down this question. And the question is, what is your biggest challenge with selling on the phone? What is it? What is the biggest challenge with selling on the phone? It might be, the opening. It might be the getting them to stay on the phone. So building rapport, urgency. Good. Okay. Not being able to read the customer's face. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, that was Ola. Great. Good. Lack of eye contact. Over talking. Great. So there's some real kind of sales stuff, typical sales things that we kind of get into, value, building rapport. That kind of happens anywhere. And then, of course, the physicality of actually being able to go in there and do this. So let's first of all think about what we're doing on the phone. What is the phone call for, right? Typically in sales, it is to prospect. It is to maybe close a deal because you've already done a bunch of work. It's to get to the next step in an opportunity or to even follow up. That's typically it, right? So if we're prospecting, meaning we're making that initial phone call out of the blue, or we've kind of given them a sense that we're going to be calling, there you go. That's that one call. If we actually are closing a deal, actually going through the sales process in that and or asking for the order and then going to the next step. What I want to cover with you here today are three components of this. One is the approach that I believe you should be taking when you go on the phone. Some things that really make a big difference. The next is kind of the process. And I covered a little bit of this when on Monday's webinar around selling virtually, some of the sales process things to think about selling virtually. And then actually the content. What are the kinds of things that you should be saying on the phone from there? Okay, so here is the big one, all right? Selling on the phone is actually no different than, or should be no different than how you sell normally. I will meet reps all the time, salespeople, where when they're in person, they're dynamic and they're really, just comfortable. And then when they get virtual, now, and that's a new thing. When I mean new, for the masses, it's new. And now that's kind of the technology, and then on the phone, when they're doing the phone, they become like a different person on the phone. So rule number one, be consistent. Be you. One of the biggest advice I could give to anybody selling the phone is sell on the phone just as if they were in person, right? Here's rule number two on the phone. Rule number two is drop the enthusiasm, okay? So a lot of us are thinking, hi, Mr. Doyle, how are you today? Or hi, my name is Shawn Doyle and I'm with this and I'm here to talk about. It sounds like what? It sounds like a salesperson. If there's anything that we all know really well is that when we pick up the phone, we can kind of sense when it is a sales call and when it isn't. And one of the first things that we subconsciously listen for is when we hear that little bit of a typical kind of sounding opening, our brain kind of cuts off. We either just hang up or we kind of get this attitude of, what do you want? The best way to open is just to really kind of, serious, but, hi, Mr. Doyle. My name is Shawn, and I'm with this, and I'll talk to you about the opening. But this, and I'd really like to ask you a question. Have you thought about, one, it's different. Two, is it's a bit conversational. I don't mean monotone. I don't mean without energy. What I'm saying is, don't be salesy, especially in the beginning of that. And I would say that this actually transcends into regular physical call or a virtual call. All right. The more, that beginning. Next thing. So I show this slide when I am teaching presentation, presenting information. And typically when we're learning how to present information, it's physical. And this is a very real set of statistics. And that is, the clients remember, very little about what you said. They more so remember how you looked and how you sounded. And what I'm here to tell you is that on the phone, the same principle applies. The same principle applies. Now, they obviously can't see you physically, but they do see you. Think about when you are on a call with anybody, a friend, a colleague, you create a picture in your head of the other person that you are talking to. That's human nature. And I'm not saying it's a very detailed picture necessarily, but we think in pictures and images. It's part of our lizard brain, all right? So when we remember a call or a meeting or any kind of a presentation, communication, what we remember is this picture, this feeling, this image that we had during that, whether it's in person, virtually, or on the phone. And so a lot of what I'm going to be sharing with you today is maybe some of the things that we've heard in other trainings, but maybe a little bit different context to it, a little different as to why you should do it this way. Because what people are going to remember and respond to is how you sounded. And how you sound needs to create a picture. And it needs to build an image, if you will, for the person on the phone. So this principle still applies because they're not really listening to necessarily what you said. They're listening to how you say it. So my recommendation is this: sell as if you were there. If you're on the phone and this is how you sell, if you're in person and this is how you sell, then I would suggest you sell like this on the phone, right? Now, of course, the approach is going to be a little bit different. We'll cover that. The process or the objection and goal, a little bit different. We'll cover that. But when you're on the phone, to think that we need to change our behavior and change everything we do is kind of silly, in that, we wonder, we have the phone and we go to the phone, it's this, we get real relaxed, because people can't see me, right? I kind of tend to go into a different mode. Your voice is going to follow your presentation, your entire presentation. So part of that is that you need to think that way. Now, when you sell as if you were there, if I start off with a phone call and then I'm able to do a virtual call, I'm the same person. They're getting the same thing. If I then have the opportunity to meet you or go do some measurements or something, and then we kind of, you're meeting the same person, right? So if you want that person on the phone to be you, you need to, present as if you were there. So what I teach when you're presenting, I don't even know if you guys really thought we would go this way, right? Is when I teach you presenting, is body language and movement is critical when you're presenting. Now, even if you're more of an introvert, you're quiet, a bit more stoic, a more purposeful, a little bit, you don't have necessarily the highs and the lows. That body language and that energy when you're presenting still needs to go because it all connects together, right? Eye contact, facial expressions, gestures, positioning. One of the tips that you may have seen with other components is that they will say two things I hear a lot. One is you put a mirror in front of you when you're presenting so that you can see yourself, because they want you to, they, meaning people that put these programs together, they want you to remember to smile. Why? They can't see me smile. Because when I'm smiling, my tone's different. My approach is different. And what I'm saying is, if the mirror works, great. But if you can actually just present like you normally present, right? In presentation, everything starts with the eyes. Everything starts with the eyes. Now, I'm not going to get into physical presentation right now. I just want to cover the high level. But the eyes draw and actually make the facial expressions. And then the facial expressions kind of draw that body language, right? So if I can say, I could say something like, how are, that's a really interesting question. Why are you asking? That's an interesting question. Why are you asking? That's an interesting question. Why are you asking? Yeah, you'll watch yourself. If you change the way you say something, your expressions change. I mean, it's really incredible. The good news is that all of this is connected. So the other thing is movement. A lot of us think better. We get on the phone. I'm one of those. We're pacers. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you kind of get into the shell. You kind of get into this mode of, you know, my whole world is kind of on the phone and right here. So I would recommend that you try to put yourself in a position where you can use body language. So a good quality speaker, phone, or actually more so headset and this, so that it sounds the quality like this, right? Now, I told you in the beginning that I want the person that's listening to this to kind of have an image of you. What is that image of you? Okay, I don't want them thinking I'm there by myself selling, but what I do want them thinking is that I'm here and I'm all here. I'm all right here for them. It's not the physicality. It's that the physicality drives a lot of what happens in your voice and how you say things. So I'm going to stop there just for a second on that whole physical. Any questions or comments on that? Anything there, Steve?
Just Ashraf said, get dressed to look like you're working it will reflect on your tone.
That's crazy, right? That's crazy. It is absolutely true. It is absolutely true. And if you approach the phone call with, the sense of non-preparedness, or lack of professionalism. And that's why, listen, an easy trick. On the phone, do it as if you were in person, at least to some extent that you feel comfortable with. I think you guys get the spirit of what I'm trying to say here. Any other questions at all? Comments? Anybody? Anything?
Dylan agrees, 100% dressed like you're going to work it, especially in these strange times.
Great. Good. Okay.
The sweats are not going to work.
So the sweats would work if you are good at portraying an image that you're not in sweats. And if the voice is all I have to do that, if the voice is the only thing that I have to do that, how is the voice reflecting and creating the picture in my head? Right? So let's go to this next one, voice. So Daniela, actually, tone is everything, but it's more than tone, Daniela. The voice is such a critical instrument, even in physical presentation, in an office or in home, building owner, architect, homeowner, distributor, I don't care what it is. The tone and how we hear things, we interpret meaning as humans based on what the intent of what something is being said, not necessarily the content, right? We all don't walk around talking like Spock or listening like Spock in Star Trek. Everything's logic. We take meaning from everything, every little cue. So it's not just tone. It's the pace. It's your diction. It's moving it a little bit forward. If I spent the whole time on the phone talking at this pace and being very measured in how I talk, this gets kind of old really quick, right? But it's amazing how many people do that. Now, my sense is that when I meet people and I say, okay, show me how you sell in person. And I'm going to put the headset on you and let's just hear what that sounds like. And they start going and pretend like they're selling to me, but doing it, while talking on the phone, and we're recording that, is that the ability to communicate by speeding up a little bit, slowing down, going a little bit up, it's all of these things that you need to be aware of. So you need to be very hyper aware. Here's what you do. I would implore everybody to record yourself doing a phone, role play phone call. Just record yourself, like your opening statement. So it's 2 minutes long or whatever, but record that and then kind of role play in your head if they ask questions, and just record some of that and do it where we normally do it, where we're sitting at a desk. We've got something that we're writing on, we're doing that. And then I want you to do it where you are actually doing it like you're presenting, and then play them both back. And you tell me which one sounds more compelling. Okay. Diction and enunciation. Diction and enunciation is important all the time. Most of us talk like we have marbles in our mouth. And I don't mean accents or whether it's a foreign dialect accent or it's a geographical accent. I'm talking about making sure that you're saying your T's and your K's and your P's and your M's and your N's. You need to be able to understand what I'm saying, because this is all I have to build this picture on, okay? So everybody say out loud with yourself. People around you will probably think you're nuts. Mumsy made me mash my mutton. Mumsy made me mash my mutton. Charlie chews his chocolate shoes. Charlie chews his chocolate shoes. Charlie chews his chocolate shoes. 20 tentacles tickling Ted. Ricky sticky yucky duckies. Take this, print it, do whatever you want to with it as far as making your own, but have those that you could just go through really quickly before you jump on the phone. Even when you have very good diction and articulation, you kind of need to warm up a bit on that. And just going through this once, each one of those once, will really do wonders for you. And it gets your brain kind of kicking into gear, right? Okay. The next big component, listening. So we need to be very, very conscious of how we build our picture and portray our picture. When we do get somebody to engage with us on the phone, how we listen and how we respond will actually finish off and create even a better picture, right? It'll be a better picture based on that. And a lot of it is we need to listen. We need to listen because when they talk, our first response to a question or comment they have is everything, because that's what they're hanging their jacket on, as far as, is this person worth spending another 20 seconds with or another 2 minutes with? In order to be able to respond effectively, you have to listen. Now, most people listen like they're waiting to talk. I ask you a question, you're answering, and I'm all ready to jump into that next thing. That is normal sales behavior. What I try to train people with and teach is to say, no, you need to be genuinely interested in what it is that they are doing. And I'll talk you through a little bit later a couple of things to keep in mind in order to do this, all right? So active listening, again, is body language. Guys, if you actually listen, right? So when you're doing a phone call, you need to get your space so that you're not interrupted, you're not distracted, you're all there. So the active listening is not only you listening in an active manner, active listening means the other recipient knows you're listening. The other recipient knows you're listening. And they know you're listening because of the, interesting, those kinds of comments, because the voice is all you have. Now, I'm here to tell you, if you mentally approach the phone like you do a regular call, you're going to do those things. You're going to do those things. Here is a really cool, I'll give you a cool approach or tip here, a hack in how to really, so one of the best ways to show somebody that you're listening is to take a question or an answer that they've given you and move it forward, right? So if you tell me something about where you're from, and I say that, and I do more than just, oh, really, what's it like? But I say, oh, that's interesting. The Ohio and Canton, the Football Hall of Fame is there. Have you been to, whatever I do to move that forward? It shows that I'm listening. So a great hack for this is anything with math, anything with numbers is really cool to use. I'll give you an example. So how long have you been in sales? Steve, if you don't mind joining me on this one. Right? So, guys, I say, Steve, how long have you been in sales?
18 years.
18 years. And how long have you been with GAF?
8.
8. So what were you doing the other 10 years?
Sales and estimating manager.
Right? That's where you go. Steve, when do you need this proposal by?
Yesterday.
Look it up. Yesterday. When do you need this proposal by?
Today.
Today. Okay. What happens tomorrow?
Tomorrow, it's weekend. I don't want to think about it.
So you need it by the end of Friday. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, thank you, Steve. My point is on that anything with math or time or numbers is brilliant. So if I say on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself on this? And they go, oh, between like a 5 and a 7. I'm going to respond is, okay, so describe a 6 for me. That's my point. With the math, it's a great way to move it forward, and it's simple. When you ask questions that require them to have a number or respond in some kind of number or time format, you can easily put that together and move it forward, and it's really fast and slick and a clever way to let them know you are all in. You are totally listening. For me, it helps. I use that because it helps me just be a better listener. So that hack works really well. Okay. Next piece on this. So anything on the tone? Any questions on this, Steve? I love the comments here. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that proportion.
Somebody mentioned don't cuss. Cuss is not a good thing. And don't use slang. And really don't talk over them or cut them off.
So part of that means that on the phone, you need to talk a little bit slower than you might normally talk in person. Slowing down is always a good thing. I remember the first time I went to Atlanta, Georgia. I'm from the Northeast. And I remember the first time I went to Atlanta to sell. I just picked up a huge territory in Atlanta. And I went down there and started going into my meeting. And a gentleman said, son, sit down. Calm down. Tell me about yourself. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? And my point is they wanted me to slow down because that's how they do it in the South. They do that naturally. It's a geographical kind of component. But ever since then, I've remembered that just kind of take it easy and remember that I am a fast talker. So if you don't want to talk on top of somebody, make sure you are comfortable with those little moments of silence. Okay? The other thing is to show that you're listening is to say a comment like this. That's really interesting. I'm just writing that down. That's really good. Let them know that now they're drawing this picture that you're writing that down. They're writing that down. It's totally fine to go ahead and do that. Okay, the next thing to have a call plan, guys. I don't care if the call plan is 3 lines, but right before you make up the call, actually understand what it is that you're trying to get from the call. So I'll talk to somebody and I say, what's the objective of the call? And they'll say, well, to kind of get them talking to me about what they might be looking for in a roof. Okay, that is what's going to happen on the call. What's the objective of the call? Is it another meeting? Is it a virtual meeting as a follow-up? Is it a permission to go by and get some measurements or get information so that you can get back to them? What is the objective, the outcome of the objective of the meeting? And then what you're going to do in the meeting is hopefully get them to talk about their roof, get them to talk about maybe their home improvement stuff, get them to talk about some of the things they have coming up in the future, all of those things. That's what you're doing in the call. What's the objective of the call? Because when you look at phone calls as my objective is to build some rapport, qualify a little bit further, and to set up a meeting or this becomes my first meeting, that's the objective. And you need to have a clear thing in your head as to what that is. The next thing you need to do in this plan is to understand what that next step is. And it's because you're going to actually sell them on the process, not just let the process happen. Okay? So you really need to have a plan. Make sure that you're sitting down and you're going through a plan. It can literally be one sheet with 3 things, or it could be a much more complicated. What is it that you're trying to achieve? Who's the person? What's the name? What's the territory? However detailed you are as a professional salesperson in that manner. But make sure you have that and have it for every call that's worthwhile. You would do this for a regular sales meeting. Why wouldn't you do it for a telephone call that actually has a lot of impact in a meeting? Okay. No, you wouldn't necessarily do a call plan because you're following up to answer a question and you had a couple more questions. You know, in the kind of scheme of things from actions that takes place. But I think you guys get the spirit of what I'm talking about, right? The idea of attention is critical. I teach this in presentation. It's called the hammock effect. And the reality is that the beginning and the end is what people remember. The beginning of the call, the end of the call. The beginning of the call and the end of your first section. The beginning of the next section and your next transitions. What we don't remember is the stuff in between. So taking a break and going to each phase is really, really important. Now, this is kind of a typical process, sales process. I only show it to just have it up there as that we have a sense of this. In a phone call, depending on why you're calling, prospect, it's a sales call, close the deal. You want to have, as part of your plan, where are you trying to get to? What are you trying to get to next on there, right? And the reality is that on the phone, it's really difficult to go a long way through the process. In-person selling, we show up in the home, or the process just happens. All of it happens at once. In a virtual world, or in this world, the phone world, selling the process is one of the most powerful things you can do. And what I mean by that is the idea that they want to know why you're calling. We'll get to that. They want to know if they're interested in listening some more. We'll get to that. But once they are there, then it's, okay, how's this going to work? What is this really? So the quicker that you can kind of get me to understand how this is going to work and how much you either are going to be interrupting me or not, the better. And so that's why I talk about this. Now, a simple process on the phone is you're opening your intro, the build rapport. Now, the build rapport could be real kind of casual if you've got that kind of person and you have the opportunity to make a joke or small talk. Or it can build rapport by asking them a question. Then there's the engagement, that initial engagement that hopefully leads to something, and then there's the next step. Now that next step could be, can we continue with the phone call? Is now a good time? Yes. Now you're starting your next piece. But you really need to be thinking process, really thinking process on phone or virtual, because it does become linear. I don't have all of this in the home where everything can kind of happen dynamically at the same time. You lose that. You lose that a bit, okay? So engagement is the key. Getting them engaged and keeping them engaged is the key. And there's a couple of ways and techniques to get them to do that. One of the items I use, this is a Sandler, S-A-N-D-L-E-R, Sandler technique. And Sandler says, he has this thing called upfront contract, and it's brilliant. There's lots of different versions, you can look it up. But basically the upfront contract is you are at some point agreeing on how we're going to move forward. So it could be simple as, so thanks a lot for the time. I really appreciate it. Before we get started, I just want to say, I really respect your time. And what I'd like to do is kind of go through here and then maybe ask some questions and then tell you a little bit about what it is. And then I'm going to stop and kind of see if it makes sense to move forward, then let's agree to move forward. And if it doesn't make sense to move forward, well, then let's go ahead and agree for that as well. I love yeses, but I love no's too. And I don't want to waste your time. Can we do that? They'll always say yes. But what I'm doing is I'm setting up how we're going to go. And I'm keeping the engagement because I'm saying, here's this. Now when I get there, so how are we doing? Should we move forward? Oh, yeah, I'm in. And you actually want to do that when you know they want something next, because now they're driving that call. They're driving the call, right? So the upfront contract is brilliant. And I would use it in all of my calls, but on virtual and on the phone, it's a really, really key item because you want to control and keep dragging them in to the call, if that makes sense. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop there. Steve, got any questions?
No questions, although I think Ashraf, hopefully I'm pronouncing their name properly. They're burning up with some great advice. They mentioned build an emotional connection with the customer. And human side of you, take about your family, kids, they will open up to you.
Yes, so that's brilliant. And that goes to my first comment. You would do that normally, right? You would do that normally. Now what's tricky on the phone is I don't have that visual body language to build really quick rapport that body language allows us to do. So you got to be careful how quickly you start jumping into sounding like a salesperson on the phone. But if you can get to that, that's really, really good. I submit to, let's get to business first. Let me get quickly to the point of why I'm calling and do it in a way that you are compelled to say, okay. And then from there, actually try to build by the upfront contract. And now I have kind of permission to ask a couple of questions and get a couple of things going there. But if I start off with trying to make emotional connection, and I know you're not saying that, but if I try to start off that way, like I might in a normal sales call, I'm not going to probably keep that person too long. I mean, with our attention span right now, again, the minute you sound like a salesperson, they've mentally clicked off or they've left. And I'm not just talking about prospecting. Okay. I'm talking about even in a regular sales call. Okay. Okay. So you want to, there's many techniques on how to open a call. The first one that I suggest is to make it not over the top enthusiasm. Make it clear, concise, but you want to introduce yourself, your company, and what it is that you're doing. You want to get that right out there in a very clean, succinct manner, right? And what you're trying to do is, from a prospecting perspective, you are trying to get them to understand if there's something there to move forward on. When we think of telephone sales, that's kind of what we think of first is that prospecting, but it doesn't have to be. This could be somebody that emailed you, it's a lead that you got, you loved it, but they don't want to do virtual and they can't meet with you. They just want to do a phone call, or you want to do the phone call. Okay. So when you do that, you know, you need to remind the person up front what that is, right? A great flow is, here's who I am, my company. Here's what we do that could benefit this. And should we continue on through this? That's kind of like the high level kind of process, that piece in this particular format. The first impression is critical because you only have a few seconds, right? You only have a few seconds to really kind of get that first impression of that image. And so if you're sounding really professional, like you're not salesy and you're getting to the point, then your credibility is the next piece. So credibility's got to come out pretty quickly. And you want to hit credibility by engaging either what we're doing for other people or what we could do for them. It's focused on the problem. The problem. A typical example is, good morning, my name is Shawn. I'm a contractor with this, and we provide and we also help. You know, some of the questions we get all the time are this, this, and this. And, are any of these things that you guys have, and again, I'm doing this from kind of a prospecting perspective, but let's take it from, it's not a prospect. They've already initiated contact and said they'd love to get to this. I'm still going to start off with this kind of component. This is what we do for people, right? These are the problems and the questions we have. I want to make it early on. I want to make it really easy for them to engage with me and get into that. So the 30-second speech as a technique, one of many, is to introduce, about us, about them. And one of the components to this is to use what's called 3 anchors, to use anchors. And anchors are things like questions we get all the time, the problems that we typically solve, the focus that we're normally, those anchors, because then the person can actually draw a picture very, very quickly, right? An anchor is something that they can connect to very quickly and get a sense of, right? So if you're using anchor as storm damage, it's in a storm area, how am I going to be able to get the insurance? Then that anchor can help drive an image or a picture that's about that, right? Between the about us and the about them, right, is what's called this thing called a bridge. So the bridge is the piece in this. So here I am, I do this, and I'm with this company, and we do this. You know, many customers we work with in your area have been doing this, and doing this. Then it's the bridge. Most people in your position, customers like yourself, many others that have been through this storm, you know, most people that contact us over the internet or whatever it is, you want to go ahead and use that bridge like these examples, because you want to get them thinking that there is this commonality. They understand that the problem they have or may have is something that a lot of people get. People respond to that very, very quickly. What they don't respond to is, hey, do you have any problems? What can I do for you? Right? So a bridge can be a statement that they agree or disagree, or the bridge can be, a question, and that answers kind of come into a conversation. So the last piece is then called what's called the flip, and that is after you've had that discussion to summarize and say, okay, so basically you said this and this and this. All right, well, if those are the things, what would be the next step? Should we talk about that right now or get into that, right? So the first thing that you want to do is you want to try and get to a place where you can have a better dialogue. And trying to get a ton of problems and the entire discovery and everything else usually doesn't work. You want to try to kind of get a quick win. So introducing yourself, what you do, what most people, right? You're solving for them, or very specific that they can kind of relate to. Then asking them, is this something that they're working with? Or then you kind of get into a dialogue back and forth. Now you've kind of got that first in. You've got that first in. And then you're going to stop and say, well, sounds like we might have some things to talk about. Would you agree? So we can either do that right now, or would you like to maybe jump on whatever your next step is. Now you can go through that, and you can also use that upfront contract as a way to go ahead and get this. All right. Top mistakes. When you ask the prospect, so what do you want to do? That's really tough to get out, because what they're going to do, here's what they're going to say. Send me some information. Send me an email. Follow the prospect's next request. So even if the prospect has a good request, try to take it and then add something to it so that it's both of yours. Use the process with no bridge, meaning that, hi, my name is this, my name is this, my name is this. What is it that you're not even setting up the image of why people, what makes you unique, what makes you. So remember the emotion comment that we had from one of the things? The bridge is a great way to do that. You know, when most customers work with us, the feedback that we get are typically great connection, love the fact that you're family, and everything else. And this seems to be important to a lot of buyers. Are those things important to you? So I'm allowed to actually, by using that bridge, a way to kind of get those, but you got to plan this ahead of time. You've got to really have this opening statement down, okay? This book, I don't even know when it was written. Nobody's heard of it. It's phenomenal. I've read it over and over and over. It's called So What? The copyright on this thing is 2008, 2006, something like that. It's called So What? But in So What, Mark has got a great formula for this, a lot of what your guys are sending me in chats and the notes. You know, we've all learned why me, why my company, why now, why this, why, all of those are correct. So What is a really cool way to, and he makes it simple, and it's an easy read. You see, it's not that, you know, it's kind of salesperson length. They have a website, but it's another formula like the one I showed you that really helps you with that opening statement really, really well. Part of his approach is to kind of, in a really simplified way, explain what you do and how you do it so that the common person can really get to it. So let's say, I mean, kind of an extreme example. A lot of people say, Shawn, what do you do? What do you do for GAF? And I can kind of go into, well, we do this and we do that, and I'm a consultant, whatever. But his approach is, well, you know, Steve, you know how sales reps really get, you know, kind of overwhelmed with all of the content and product and all the responsibilities they get to do, so they kind of miss what they're supposed to be focused on. I help them focus on that. I help them get rid of the clutter so they can focus on those things that are most important. And I do that by acting as a coach. Something as simple like that, right? So, you know, most people, when I heard one of our contractors say, I loved it. He said, you know, we're a contractor and we do this and this and this. That's what we do. You know how when this happens and this happens and this happens, well, what we do is we do this and this and this and this. That's really what we do. And the person can immediately connect to that. And it's great. This is great for in-person. This is great for virtual. It really works well on the phone because that opening grab is so critically important in that. And I'll give you one last one on this. From a building rapport, which is really kind of difficult to do on the phone, and some of you have mentioned that in the beginning, I use what's called the 2-minute commercial. So I'll say, Steve, so listen, before we kind of get started, Can you just give me a 2-minute commercial on, what it is that you're looking to get from this call today?
So, Shawn, I would like to see what the cost of my roof is going to be, what services you provide, and what the lead time is, that type of thing.
Great. Another way to use this is, can you give me a 2-minute commercial on your situation? Your home, the roof itself. What is it that you think might be the issue? My point is that when you say the 2-minute commercial or 5-minute commercial, it adds some levity to the, can you please tell me about this and this? That really sounds formal. It's just a little hack that I use all the time, and everybody answers it. Everybody answers it. Some chuckle when they answer, others like, okay. But they immediately get into themselves and they start explaining, because all I told them to do is, can you just kind of give me a brief overview on what's most important, because whatever they respond with is probably the things that are most important to them on that, okay? So we're now to the next important part, was questions, but I'll also stop to see if we have any questions. Does anybody have any questions at all?
The only question that really showed up, a lot of comments, a lot of people are engaged, but the one question that came up, it's from somebody, I think John from GAF. What's up with the beard?
Oh, Mr. Ariano, my friend. For any of you that know me, I've not had the beard for quite a while. I actually started growing the beard before COVID. So this whole beard thing that everybody's doing I started the trend. That's a terrible thing to say. At the beginning of the year, I was home. I travel a lot, at least used to. And I had a big gap of time before we had our big conference at the beginning of the year. Short story, my kids said, wow, you're really home? I said, yes. And they said, we don't believe it. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll stop shaving and I'll grow a beard by the time I leave. And of course, then I turned to my wife and said, am I really gone that much? She goes, yeah, you are. And so I grew the beard and I haven't cut it since then. There's the story. So thank you. A little bit more than you ever wanted to know about Shawn Doyle.
Well, I saw it and I said I wanted to be like Shawn. So that's why I'm going mine.
God help you. God help you. That's a whole nother seminar. All right, let's get to some of this other stuff with questions. Questions. Guys, this is the most important skill that you can master.
What do you say on the voicemail?
What's that?
One question from Christy. What do you say on voicemail?
So let's think back to our process. What is the purpose and what is the goal? The goal is to get them to call back, or the goal is to maybe take the call the next time I call. So you got tons of recommendation. There's a lot of great stuff on the internet and everything else. Here's mine recommendation. I don't want to say too much. I actually want to say enough that maybe kind of gets them to call back. So something like, hi, this is Shawn Doyle with this. We're in your area, this and then this. I've got some things I'd love to talk to you about that some other people are doing. I think you might be interested. That's if I'm prospecting. If it is because I'm following up on a call, a sales call or something like that, I would have already set up the upfront contract so they know that I'm calling. And in the voicemail, I reference the upfront contract. As we had mentioned, I was going to follow up and then we're going to determine whether if this makes sense. We thought that it did, and I'm calling to go ahead and continue that conversation, at your convenience. Short, sweet, to the point. Don't be salesy. The same kinds of things go into play there.
Shawn, a couple other ones about the opening. First one is, would leading with, is this a good time, be good for a prospect?
So
in the context, if you want to know the context, I find that if I start introducing myself and our company before seeing if it is a good time, can lead to them disqualifying me for good.
Yes. So it comes back to that intro. That intro needs to be really tight. And when you learn it, that's one thing you're going to memorize and learn. It can't sound salesy. So you got to be able to kind of get right to the point and then ideally ask them a question. And the question hopefully gets them to respond. I don't necessarily out of the gate say, is this a good time? Because that sounds like every telemarketing that's ever called me. Also, it's so easy to say, no, it's not. Well, then what is a good time? I don't know, call back, right? I'll go a little bit a ways. Now, to your point, if I can get in there and ask a question, get them to say, is this something interested in over the next 6 months in home improvement? If financing or, whatever it is and whatever your opening is, they say, well, actually, yes. And I guess, okay, I'd love to spend some time talking to you about it. Is now a good time? Now that'd be cool. Now that'd be appropriate to go that. And if it's not, then you need to kind of schedule that. If you're in your opening or at some point and they say, now's not a good time, my response is, I realize that, that you're very, very busy. But if you could just take a look at something, or I just wanted to share with you this thing. Now, all of you are right now saying, oh, Shawn, that sounds salesy and everything else. Guys, we are professional salespeople, okay? And there is a point, whether it's in person or on the phone, that we need to be a bit aggressive in order to try to get to that next piece. I don't mean rude. But there's, in my mind, nothing wrong with saying, now I get it, everybody's busy. If you could just take a look at this, or I just wanted to, you'll be surprised. 50% of them will go, okay. Then most of them say that because it's just a really easy way to kind of get off. And if you ask them to maybe continue a little bit further or just listen for another minute, they will. The other half won't, but they weren't going to anyway. That's my take on it. Great.
Now, how do you walk somebody from the phone call appointment to the virtual appointment, since some may not be tech savvy?
So if I am, I would have a process set up in my upfront contract to be able to do both. To say, normally what I'd love to do is actually set up a virtual sales call, a video call, so that we can actually see each other a little bit more and I can share some information. Is that something that you're able to do? I ask. And if they say no, if they say yes, I say, great. Are you comfortable with that? Yeah, kinda. Well, because if they're a little on the fence, I still want to kind of get them there. If they're like, no, I don't have the technology, I just don't like it. Okay, so the phone is good? Great. So, and now I'm with my upfront contract. So here's how I'd love to be able to proceed. When I give you a call, I'm going to send you some stuff. Would you be able to? I want to walk them through the process. You got to sell the process, guys, because you don't have, the live environment where everything's happening real time. That's how I'd walk them into the virtual component. If anything came out of COVID-19, it's the fact that the masses in general have realized this is actually a pretty fair way to engage, but you're still going to be using the phone a lot. Any other questions?
Yeah, you're very popular today. How do you suggest procuring leads to the call?
Oh, I wish I understood that question a little bit more.
How did they get the leads for the cold call, and how do you handle those cold calls?
Okay. So if you're prospecting is a whole nother webinar. I'm not trying to shove this thing out, but the prospecting is a plan. You need to have an approach when you're prospecting. All right. So, having that opening, trying to get them. Prospecting is about qualifying enough to get to a step. It's not to sell or close a deal. It's to get to the next step. Would it make sense for us to take a look at this and see if this is something that interests you a little further? Because I don't know if it is. That would be my approach all the time. And my close for that call is to just get them to either continue the call, to do a video call, or a follow-up. Now, very real, they might not call back. They might not answer the phone when they get back. You might lose them. So depending upon your comfort, how aggressive you go to, but you have to kind of end it Like say, okay, boom, my prospecting portion is done. I'd love to continue right now telling you, is that okay with you? Do you have the, I am now segueing from one part of the call to the next, if that makes sense. Great.
Absolutely. Shawn, there's more questions. If you don't mind, I'm going to pop up just the registration just in case some people have to go.
Yeah. Yep. Go ahead and pop that up. Guys, I'm just gonna real quick, and I'll let Steve kind of finish this thing. Questions and asking questions is one of the most important, critical components. We actually have a webinar on it. So stay tuned for that. It is the single best skill. When people say, what do I say? You've got to be great at asking questions, open-ended questions, probing questions. How do you use the closed-ended questions? And when you understand the power of questions and actually have to get more comfortable with them to use them, all of this that we're talking to is better. But from a phone, be yourself, be physical, do it just like you were there live. Let the tone and your physicality and the actions take care of what you do really, really well to begin with. You'll sound phenomenal on the phone. You won't be afraid of it.
Great question from Josh. Do you find these pointers the same for commercial and residential roof prospecting as well as business owner versus homeowner?
Yeah. So if I were with Josh, I'd say, Josh, what do you think? And he's probably going to say, well, probably that. Yes, they are. Absolutely. The steps and the process, the agenda, the objective might change, right? I just want to get a meeting with an architect. I just want to be able to get in front of the building owner because I'm going to be spending the next 6 months trying to, so those things change, but the actual process and the energy behind the call, that's the same for anybody, for anything.
When somebody's a no-show for your initial phone call, what does your follow-up look like? How do you continue to build value without spilling the beans?
Yeah, so that is just such a nightmare, right? And that's the part in L sales that we just don't want to get to. So the upfront contract really helps with that, right? So ideally, I've set the upfront contract in some manner that says, listen, I'm going to be calling you and we're going to be doing this. If you're not there saying, as we discussed the call, I'm going to call back later and see if there's a better time. I'm sure something came up and we're going to do that. Now, my method, this is Shawn Doyle, is that I'm going to call back and I'm going to keep calling back. I'm very persistent. Most sales reps don't call more than twice. I'm going to call 6, 7 times. That's me. That's me. I'm comfortable with that. I know the numbers work out. Most other people, they just don't feel comfortable with it. Okay. I don't really know what to tell you. But if you can leave, you need to set up all the time, set up what's going to happen if they don't follow through. That's what the upfront contract is for. If something happens, we're going to do this, but let's at least agree that we're going to move forward or agree that it doesn't make sense.
Great. Last 2 things, and then I know just out of respect for everybody's time, one is sometimes they're faced with leaving something in the mail or the drop box at the location. What would be some good verbiage to write, to let them know that they have storm damage?
So first of all, always focus on what the problem is. What is going to happen if they don't take care of it? People respond to pain. People respond to, why should I care? Why should I change? Why should I do something about it? They don't care what you can do or how great you are. So don't leave stuff that talks about how phenomenal you are. Leave stuff or messages or anything that talks about why they need to contact you or anybody about getting that fixed. That would be my main comment on that.
Great. And I guess what a lot of people are asking is, if you were a roofing contractor right now, Shawn, and you were making that initial call, what would be your first line after you say hello?
Great question. So I would be playing the long game. I would be calling to say, you know what, I'm just going to be right up front. I'm a contractor in this, and I'm calling to see if over the next year or two, you might be thinking, the reality is I've got a lot of time on our hands, and I've been wanting to reach out and get to know a number of people in the area that I serve. And so I'm just kind of doing that, and would love to know if that's something that you're thinking. And we can set up something down the road when things calm down, when things clear out. When I want to make it really comfortable, and definitely let them know I am not calling to try to sell them something now.
Awesome. Okay, Shawn, always a pleasure working with you, buddy.
Guys, your comments are phenomenal. Anything that I can do to help you guys out. I'm in love with the contractors and what you guys do, both commercial. My background is actually more commercial with complex selling, but we have presentation training, questions training, and actually how to deliver really concise messages. That's what I'm most focused on, and I'm passionate about it. Anything I can do to help any of you out, please do not hesitate. And thank GAF for, again, just being so far ahead of everybody in providing all this information.
And please look, oh, sorry. And I was just saying, please look, we're going to do a questions webinar in the week of the 4th. We're going to start a series. He's going to do a 2-part series, and we're going to start it on the week of the 4th. So look for that.
So if you guys, and ladies, if you guys really enjoyed this, please fill out the survey. It's just simple, 3 simple questions. It's all anonymous. Did you enjoy this training / speaker? How likely are you to apply what you learned in this webinar in your business and or job? And on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being extremely likely, how likely are you to either recommend the speaker to a colleague or friend, or watch the speaker again on a different topic? Here at GAF, we are dedicated to providing the best training, the best tools, and the best information that we can, especially during these difficult times. So your information and your response to those polls mean so much to us, as well as Shawn. So please enter in that poll. In the meantime, I know many of you probably have already seen is the registration links are up. So please, if you can fill out that registration, there's 3 ways. There's the QR code, there's the URL link, as well as sending the text message. Either one of those will work. When you click on that registration, it's going to ask you to enter in your company name, your first name, your last name, and your email. You do not have to do your phone number. It's really those first 4 that's the important things. If you're not a GAF contractor, let's say you're a distribution, or you're a non-GAF affiliated contractor, that's okay. Just remember, you're going to have to fill in that company name in its entirety, because as it's set, it will auto-populate for the GAF contractors. Please enter your first name and last name. Remember, when you're entering in the names, if you have a less than comment, sometimes your computer or your phone will auto-correct. Please make sure that that doesn't happen, so that your name is spelled correctly on the certificate. And lastly, please enter in your email that the certificate will be trained to. But wait, there's more. There's a whole bunch of goodies associated with that. Once you fill that out, you'll be landing on a splash page for the Learning Academy, which will provide you videos, manuals, courses. So more, if you want to know more about webinars, you can go directly to that course list link. And also, most importantly, is if you want to know more or have somebody to talk to, click on the Contact Us. That will bring you to Find a Territory Manager. That's basically our residential, our commercial, and our coding sales individuals. So please reach out, just click on the zip code, and it will bring up your local salesperson. So with that said, thank you everybody for joining us. Please be safe. I see there's a question about what do GAF credits mean. That means if you're a GAF contractor, a Master Elite, Master Select, you'll get training credits. Once you acquire enough training credits, GAF will give you a Training Excellence Award. Okay. So great question. And here is the 3 ways to register once again. I'll keep that up for another minute. Once again, thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you guys and get ladies again.
Be safe, everybody. Talk to you soon. Good selling.
See you, Shawn.